In ancient India, there were two types of republic or Gansanga. In the first type, we see that only a single Kshatriya clan ruled. In the second type, we find that multiple Kshatriya clans or multiple Ganas came together to form the Gansanga. The Vrijji Gansanga was the latter type. And in our history books, we are told that the Vrijjis were a confederacy of some 8 or 9 Ganas. Now, in this video, we will try to analyze what is the basis of this claim that the Vrijjis were a confederacy of 8 or 9 different Kshatriya clans or Ganas. When we analyze the history of this claim, we find that the first scholar who made this claim was an Englishman called George Turner. In an article for the Journal of Asiatic Society of Bengal, which was published in 1838, he argued that the Vrijjis were possibly composed of 8 different tribes. Later, this idea of George Turner was supported by Alexander Cunningham. In his book, The Ancient Geography of India, Cunningham wrote, and I quote, "In the time of the Buddha, the Vrijjis were divided into several clans, as the Lichavis, the Vaidehis, the Tirabhuktis, and others, whose names are unknown. The exact number of their clans would appear to have been 8. So these were the two scholars who popularized this claim. Now, one question which could be asked is, what is the basis of this number that the Vrijjis were composed of 8 different clans? Or in other words, what is the source behind this claim? So the answer to this question is a text called Sumangal Vilasini. Sumangal Vilasini is a commentary on another Buddhist text called Dig Nikai. And this Sumangal Vilasini was written by a Buddhist philosopher whose name is Buddhaghosh. Now, in this text, Buddhaghosh has mentioned a term which is Attakulika. Attakulika of the Vrijjis. It is from this single term, Attakulika, that Cunningham has based this whole argument that the Vrijjis were composed of 8 different clans. When talking about this term, Attakulika, Cunningham in his book, The Ancient Geography of India, argues that this term, Attakulika, appears to have been a jury composed of one member from each of the separate divisions of the tribe. So in other words, this term Attakulika suggests a legal tribunal in which there were 8 members. 8 members because the Vrijjis were composed of 8 different clans, and each clan sent a single person for this legal tribunal. That is why we have the number 8. It was this conclusion of Alexander Cunningham which was later picked up by nearly all of the historians, and that is what we see written in our history books. But there are some scholars who have argued against this claim. In his book, The Republics of Ancient India, Jagdish Sharma argues that apart from Buddhaghosh's Sumangal Vilasini, we see that there is no other source that mentions the term Attakulika for the Vrijjis. And he also argues that the term Attakulika does not necessarily means that the Vrijjis were composed of 8 different clans. He also argues that if we look at this term Attakulika, here the word which is used is Kula. Kula here means a family group. If the author of this text, Sumangal Vilasini, who is Buddhaghosh, if he wanted to portray that the Attakulika were composed of 8 members from the different clans, he would have used the term Jana, not Kula. So most likely this term Attakulika is used for a legal tribunal which is composed of the heads of 8 leading families of Vishali. It does not mean that the members of 8 different clans of the Vrijji Republic composed this legal tribunal. So this is the argument which is presented by Jagdish Sharma. Now if we look at another type of source, which are the Jain sources, it is clear that the Vrijjis were composed of different clans of the Kshatriyas, or there was a confederation of sorts. And from reading the Jain sources, it appears that the number was certainly greater than 8. if we look at a text called Kalpa Sutra, there is a phrase which goes like this: Nav Mallai, Nav Lachai, Kasi Kosalaga Attarasa Vi Ganarayano, which means the 9 Mallas, the 9 Lichavis, indeed the 18 Ganarajas of Kasi Kosala. Now in this phrase we do not know whether this phrase 9 of the Lichavis means that the 9 clans of the Lichavi or the 9 clans of the Vrijjis. So there is this confusion from this phrase. So we cannot necessarily say from this particular phrase that the Vrijjis were composed of 9 different clans. So from these two sources, the Jain and the Buddhist, it is quite clear that the Vrijjis most likely were not composed of 8 or 9 clans of the Kshatriyas. Now the question comes is, what is the real number of the clans which constituted the Vrijji Republic? In my view, we cannot say what was the real number because we do not have enough evidence. But according to historian Jagdish Sharma, the number of the clans was not fixed. He argues that this number changed from time to time. So this fluctuation was most likely because of the political situation of that particular period. So depending upon the political situation, we could see a lesser or a greater number of clans that are part of the Vrijji Republic. So this is the argument of Jagdish Sharma. Although the number was not always fixed, we can say that some clans or some Gana which constituted the Vrijji Gansanga were major influence on this confederation. So the first Gana of this type was the Gansanga of the Lichavis. So the Lichavis were a major player in this confederation of the Vrijjis, and their capital was the city of Vaishali, which was also the capital of the Vrijji Gansanga. Then another important member of this Vrijji confederation were the Vidhas. Now there are some sources like the Deepworms which argues that the Vidhas were not part of this Vrijji confederation. So it is quite hard for us to say whether Vidhas were part of this Vrijji confederation or not. Another important Gansanga which was part of the Vrijji Republic was the Gansanga of the Nayas. Nayas are important because this was the Gansanga of Lord Mahavir, the 24th Tirthankar of Jain religion. Now there are some scholars who have argued that the Mallas of Kusinara and Pava were part of this confederation. But in my view, there is not enough evidence to support this claim. So from all this, it is quite clear that the claim that the Vrijjis were composed of 8 or 9 clans of the Kshatriyas is not backed up by solid evidence. Now, when we talk about the Vrijji Republic, it is also important to note that the Vrijji Confederation or the Vrijji Republic came to an end when it was conquered by the Magadhan ruler Ajatashatru. You can watch this video to know more about how the conflict between the Vrijjis and Ajatashatru unfolded.